Put it all back together again.
What you put on to disconnect? Uh-huh.
All right. So when we're setting this up, let's get this out of here so you can see what's going on inside here. So all fermenters that in what we're doing have very many of the same connections. We're going to have an air feed. We're going to have an exhaust. We're going to have a condenser on the exhaust. Right? There's going to be some place for inoculation, some place for sampling. All right. There's going to be heating and cooling, so we maintain temperature control. And then instrumentation will consist of dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature, and foam. Right? And then we're going to have additions. So this is what the inside looks like. Okay, so when you get in underneath there, this is what you've got. All right. So there's our agitation. This is our sample port.
Mm-hmm.
This is our foam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is our cooling. You see it comes in, goes round and round, and goes back out again. Right. Okay. Here's our inoculation, acid and base. Right. Foam detection. And then this one will be our temperature detection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is called a thermal well because it's sealed. One end. All right. So air is coming in through the sparge. It's going out through the exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whole thing is sealed. And normally when we're working with it, what we will do is we'll add a small amount of, you can use a number of different things. They all have to be benign. So you can use a little Vaseline. You can use a little what we call CIP lube. I prefer that one. Some other things, but I always want to have a little bit of lubrication on here just to protect the rubber and that type of thing.
What lubricant to use?
Well, you can, like I said, you can use CIP lube, which I'll get you a couple of tubes of that. We have to order that up. You can use a little bit of Vaseline, just enough to get on your finger, just to get it on there. And it's just so it has a chance to move around without binding and whatnot, so it'll seal real good. Okay, those are things that don't affect the process. You always have to make sure that anything we put in here, doesn't affect the process. When we work with a vessel like this, we always think in terms of what we're going to call a sterile barrier, okay, or sterile envelope. And so this establishes the sterile envelope in the vessel by sealing it against the glass, right? Okay. See that? All right. The impellers, these impeller styles are called Rushton impellers, right? And they're very commonly used. Very common, okay? So that port we looked at, that spare port, that's this one right here. There's your septum port. You see the septum on there, right? There's another, and then we got our instrumentation ports as well. All right. So this guy goes back on. And we'll clamp them in. So when we go to do cleaning after a run, you can end up taking everything apart. So you'll take everything comes off, take it out, take things apart, and so we get them all nice and clean, and we put them all back together again. Now, anytime we're dealing with O-rings, and that's most of the seals that we're going to have here, great amounts of pressure are not required. So even this thing, you just turn it down finger tight. That's it. And you check around a little bit so that as you tighten, it's down. Okay. So now I'm going to hook up the hoses that came off of this. So this is my condenser. Okay. So, and they only go in one way. They're different sizes. So I'm going to connect my condenser line. This thing is already hooked up to the chilled. Okay. Here's my cold finger lines. Right. Cooling lines. So this again is vessel cooling that we're dealing with. Only goes in one way. These are different sizes. Okay. And then I'll untangle my hoses a little bit here. Air line, right? Always filtered. All right. goes into that guy. All right. When we're in autoclave mode, we'll do those. This guy we would never disconnect from here, so we'll put we'll put a cable tie on here to make sure he stays on real good. But this guy would be disconnected. You know, so we would just same thing, just connect them, just put them on there. That's all it takes. It doesn't take any more than that. Okay. All right. So we have exhaust. All right. Looking at my acid, base, and antifoam, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll start with acid, just work my way from the top down. So my acid line. Mm-hmm. So for these, all right, the outfeed is on this side. If you look at the pump, it'll say suction on the top, pressure on the bottom. There's a little sign here where my fingers are. Okay, these go this way. That's the direction of flow also, the way they move. All right, so you always know that we want this guy feeding in here on the bottom then. All right, so I'll put this guy in. It just fits into some slots, right, like so. This one the same way. Okay, I can fit him on. Right, and then I just snap that shut. Everything's in place. So acid feed is ready to go. Right, base, same thing. All right, so I look at the line going to the vessel. Is that got to be on the bottom?
So they're rotating clockwise.
Yes, they rotate clockwise as you look at them. Okay, so acid and base are now connected. And then the last one will be antifoam. Now you notice this one, the hose is different. I took their hose off and I put our hose on. We'll do some testing to see. Should work fine from what I've been able to determine. Also, we got rid of their little metal spring clamps and just used some cable ties. I'm going to talk to Dan about getting a supply of additional fittings. So we'll have those available. Oops. So. Big thing with this is that we want the hose length to be pretty close. So okay, antifoam. All right. Then put the motor on because he's big and he's in the way. And I may have to spin him around because there is a key plate in here and there's a little slot. So if it's not lined up to the slot, I just gently turn it until it falls into place. Give him a slight turn and he's locked in. Okay. And I'm going to take and add our temperature sensor. All the way to the bottom. Okay. And add our foam detection. I'm going to run him down underneath just so he doesn't get caught up. These wires are pretty fine, so we want to be a little bit careful with them just so they don't get damaged. Okay, so this is one half of the circuit. Here's the other half. So the way this works is this is insulated. Okay, so there's metal running down the middle of that. You can, if you look underneath, you can see it sticking out the bottom, right? Yeah. And so that's insulated. So we run a low current, down this guy. As soon as the liquid touches it, because of all of this other metal that's all connected here, it closes the circuit that we then feed back. Sit down and see, oh. So it acts like a little switch. Yeah, acts like a little switch.
And here how it is. Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's called a banana plug.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Okay. I don't know why, because they're straight, bananas are curved, but okay. All right. And then my other probes would be in here. And all I would have to do is take the caps off and then connect the leads to those, and we'd be completely hooked up. So at this point, then we are ready to turn on the air, we'd be turning on our cool water, right? Feed to this guy, everything would be on auto. We would then be releasing the clamps, and we'll go into that in a minute, and priming the pumps and making sure the liquid is close to our port okay? So that when there's a call for it, there's no delay before we're actually adding whatever we're calling for. All right. So, and that's done. That's all done manually. Same thing with anti-foam. So we'll release all of our clamps and whatnot. We'll get the anti-foam up to, to where it's close to the port. You get it, to where you can see it down there. Make sure that you're ready to go. Okay. That's what the rig looks like. That's basically it. All right.
And this is the acid solution.
Acid pump, acid solution.
And so this comes from the bottle, and the pump runs clockwise, and it goes to the addition port. So the way to disassemble it is to twist this. Part.
Двоє.
It's like an S.
Хоч двоє.
So just twist it like this.
Ну.
А, не так. Ага.
Он чуть-чуть так приподнимается.
Сюда.
Вот оно выходит.
And then this comes out. And then when we need to insert it again, there is a smooth part that goes inside here, right? And there is another smooth part that goes here. And it has to be snug, right? And then we position it that way. And we have to put this here, right? There is this area here.
Yes.
It has to go in here. And the same on the bottom. So you hold this with one hand and you twist this with another hand.
Yep, чтобы попало вот сюда.
There you go.
And it snaps.
Perfect.
So you open it and
Не, чтобы вот сюда надо попало.
So this is your guide. Чтобы вот это попало вот сюда. So this has to fit here. And on the bottom like that too.
There you go.
Oh, the bottom one fell out. The top one.
Yeah, you got to give it a pretty good squeeze to hold it in position.
Сначала низ, наверное.
It resists the temptation to grab the hose to pull it into position. You have to manipulate it from the...
Низ попадает, придерживаешь пальцем низ и защелкаешь. Попадаешь вверх, защелкаешь вверх.
So that's it.
One of these on the outside, and then when we're ready to run, I'll peel that off. And so the reason we're doing this, and you'll see a range of suggestions, but what I don't want is I don't want this filter to get wet in the autoclave from the steam, because once they get wet, two things happen. Number one, the rating of the filter drops, because you have what's called pathing takes place. And the other one is they don't flow air very well. They get plugged. Moisture will plug this thing up. And so this seals the whole thing off. We're fine, and we're ready to go at that point. All right. So that's this, and that would be the same for all three, of course. As we're getting ready to autoclave, we'll be disconnecting all of our connections. So everything will be coming off. And I will just carefully take the wires, pull them out of the way. Bottles will tip over a little less easily when they're full of something, right? Just get this stuff out of here so I can get at it more easily. All right. All right. So there, the big rule in any of this is when you're working with this stuff, just don't be in a rush. There's nothing that has to happen super fast. All right, so just take your time and you'll be fine. Okay. These are going to have clamps on them of one sort or another, so we'll just make sure that they're clamped. That clamps that off. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing on the outbound leg. disconnect it from the air, and I'll just kink the hose. Oops.
And all of those hoses get the same procedure. They all get
Now, these are liquid lines.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it. If they get a little water in them, they're going to have water in them. So I don't have to seal these off.
They're also not touching the medium.
Right. They are also outside the sterile envelope.
Okay.
All right. So I have no issues there. So these, all we'll do is we'll just disconnect them, and we will just take and comb them out in a way that, you know, allows us to operate with some neatness. So I don't know if you're going to want to, you know, whatever. Okay. This guy obviously would be pulled off. We'll put him back on when we bring it back out after autoclave.
Yes.
This guy will be disconnected. We'll do the same thing up here. We'll tie him off high and low. Okay. Again, what we're doing here is protecting this filter. That's the big one. Now for this guy, I think we probably would be better off using one of your other clamps, just for ease, and plus the size of that hose. You know, that hose is a big hose. So then I can just get in here, throw a clamp on it. All right.
Фильтры он пережимает, чтобы в фильтре не попала влага.
Okay. Same thing on this side.
Вот этот фильтр, он вообще нужен только для того, чтобы воздух входил,
Okay.
когда заканчивается. Но все равно он не хочет, чтобы туда попала влага.
Now this guy is on our this is sterile envelope, of course, because it does go inside. All right, and again, we want to protect the filter until we get the unit out. This is sealed, also sealed with an O-ring right down in here. Make sure that that's nice and snug. And then there's a little set screw. So you can see that right there. Okay.
And don't have a good visual on it yet. Oh, there you
Okay,
go.
a
Thank
little
you
set
very
screw
much.
right there. And it just has to be just tight enough to keep it from moving. Okay, don't go crazy. That set screw is not sealing anything. What's sealing it is the O-ring down inside. Okay, set screw is just there to hold position. That's it.
Okay.
All right. All right. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so other things we may or may not want to do. Some people like to put a little bit of foil over the top of these ports to keep water from getting in there. And that's fine. A little bit of foil over these just to keep the water from getting inside. I would put foil over this guy to keep water out of there as well. All right.
Yes.
And even though these have caps on them, I had a habit of putting a little foil on them as well. Just
on what?
On the probes.
On the probes.
Yeah. So both probes have got autoclave caps, and that's what those are. Those caps are provided specifically for purposes of offering protection during autoclave.
То есть эти сенсоры, они вставляются и когда потом мы это заглушаем в автоклав. У них есть крышечки, которые для автоклавирования.
Right? When you put this cap on, be gentle because these tend to crack an autoclave. So you can feel there's a little seal in there. So just firm. Okay, I would still put foil over the top to give it an extra measure of protection. And actually, it's really a lot of it is about protecting the cap.
Yes.
This should be. I mean, care of this is no different than any other pH probe you've got. They're all the same. It's got the glass membrane and all the rest of it. So it'd be the same thing. Taking it out, feeding it through the O-ring, getting it down, and just threading it in until it's nice and snug. You know. Now this we would prior to autoclave, just before autoclave, as a matter of fact, we would take and plug it in, and then we will calibrate it. Again, built-in calibration routine is going to work the same as your benchtop units for the most part.
Calibrate the pH probe before.
So you're going to need calibration samples, you know. And they're color coded. I usually would just keep I'd have a test tube rack with Eppendorfs with that stuff in it, and I would just keep it on the table here, so we just get to it and whatnot. This is storage solution.
Storage
Just
bottle.
loosen it up a little bit. It's just loose,
Yeah.
right? And then it comes right out.
Жидкость там остается.
Right?
Uh-huh.
When you're putting it back in, be careful not to put it in too far because you'll squirt the solution out, right? Get it to where the solution's up over it, and then just snug it down.